Joining us today, we have Tasneem Rajan, Executive Director at and Sesh Vala, former board president and current board member at Daya Houston. Welcome, both of you. How are you guys doing today?
We're good. We're happy to join you guys this month.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
This is actually, before we begin, I would definitely like you guys to tell our audience a little bit about yourselves. So please.
So I joined Daya back in October of 2024, and prior to that I had a history working with Chetna in Dallas, and we're a sister org, and I've worked about 15-20 years in the field with domestic violence, social services, children's welfare, and such. And so I'm super excited. I've been a fan of Daya for many years, have worked with them very closely, and so was able to accept the opportunity to now serve as their executive director last fall. And it's been a great, interesting journey, and I'm learning a lot from the team and the board of the services. We've been around, Daya's been around for 30 years almost. This is our 29th year, actually. And so we have a lot of roots in the community locally.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, hello, I'm Sesh Bala. As you mentioned, I was a former board member and currently an advisory board member. I've been associated with Daya, I believe, since 2006. So it's been a few years. By the way, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for hosting us. So it's really a good opportunity for us to talk about Daya. I'll say more about my involvement as we go along.
Okay, that sounds wonderful.
And so she served as like our board president at one point too.
Yes. In fact, I'm very proud to say that I was the first male board member.
Wow.
And I was the first male president.
Amazing.
Okay, so those are two distinctions that I'm very privileged and honored to have had. And I repeated many times.
And he was there when a lot of the founders were kind of, initially early on. He's really set the groundwork for our agency quite a bit.
So I have my background and experience are more corporate, management, that kind of stuff. So my interest was organizational strategy, finance. Those are the kind of areas where you can help any organization. Okay, I came for those reasons at the invitation of one of the founder members, Mrs. Lakshmi Parameshwar, and she invited me. And the way that happened is I was on the board of an organization called Indo-American Charity Foundation, and they provided some of the seed money for Daya to get started. Okay, and so when my term was over in the Indo-American Charity Foundation, Daya invited me to join their board, and that's how I got on. Though I came on for organizational reasons, I stayed on for the cause. When I saw the work being done and the need in the community, there was just no other organization fulfilling that void that was in our community of serving victims of domestic violence in the South Asian community. So that's a kind of a background. And I'm very privileged to have seen Daya grow from a tiny, all-volunteer organization to a very well-staffed professional organization. So that's what it is today.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. So the theme of today's show is the intersection of domestic violence and men's health. In fact, you said that June was National Men's Health Awareness Month?
Absolutely, yeah. And so it is Men's Health Awareness Month, and there's a particular focus on men's mental health awareness. And so, with domestic violence, there are a lot of correlated mental health concerns that come up, from like depression and anxiety to post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that, all that occur within these like relationships when abuse occurs. And so we really wanted to kind of shed some light today on kind of the experiences that our male survivors face.
It's funny because you always hear that it's usually women.
Yeah.
You never hear enough about men survivors or men that have been abused in relationships.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to know more about this, and so I guess we can just start off with the questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you explain to our audience the work that Daya does, and specifically, do you serve male survivors?
Absolutely. And, going back to men's health awareness, like a lot of times we talk about health and we don't realize that, like, domestic violence is a public health concern. It's now, been classified as such. And so when it comes to our male survivors, we absolutely do serve them. And, specifically in 2024, we served about 30 to 35 male survivors alone. We serve annually approximately 600 clients.
Wow.
And so, about 5% of those were males. We know that number is super unreported, though, and males tend to be less forthcoming. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But in terms of our services, our point of contact is our confidential helpline. Mm-hmm. And so any victim kind of going through this situation, they'll call our helpline. And we have trained, skilled advocates that answer that helpline and kind of help assess the situation. What's going on for you? What are you facing? And then they do something called safety planning when someone is in crisis. Mm-hmm. Let's say, they're in a situation they don't know entirely what to do. Our advocates will listen and they'll give options. We never, point a client in one direction or the other, but we kind of understand where they are and we work towards meeting those needs. And so safety planning can happen, like, let's say if someone's in a dangerous situation and they need an escape route out, we help them safety plan of like at what times you should leave, what you should pack, what you should take with you, how to exit safely, how to obtain housing or emergency shelter and things like that. Okay, you want to stay in the relationship, but physical abuse is happening, or even psychological, emotional abuse, which is sometimes even more damaging, is happening. How do you stay mentally safe, emotionally safe, those types of things in your situation? And so we do that safety planning, and then we open them up for like services. And so then they have access to things like case management, where we help them, set goals in different areas. Like, what is your goal for immigration? What is your goal for work? What is your goal for housing and safety and financial empowerment? And, even if it's like job, workforce training, things like that. And then we also do counseling, of course, which is super, super important in these situations where people are healing, to be partnered with a skilled counselor that can help navigate some of the things they're facing. And then we do a lot of legal advocacy. Most of our clients do come here, on some sort of legal status. They do. But then, like, seeking to leave the relationship, they may need to like seek independent, status, like if they came here with their spouse. And so we help them navigate that, but mostly just, things like protective orders. If you're in physical danger, how do you obtain a protective order? If you are wanting to go through a divorce, how do you go through those proceedings? If you have kids, how do you keep them safe, and how do you navigate the legal system with children involved? So we help with all of that. And then definitely we do financial empowerment, and that can include anything from like rent, utility assistance, setting them up with their first place, all the way to, we help them like plan for like job readiness, interview skills, resume writing and skill building and things like that, and even provide stipends for education. And so those are just some of the many services we offer to both male and female clients.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny because from the outside you're thinking, why don't they just leave?
Yeah.
Like, you were getting abused, just walk out.
Yeah.
But then there's so much more that goes into that. And after you explain this, I'm just like mind blown, like, wow, like you don't realize that they're just stuck in a situation and they don't have that help or the resources.
Yeah.
And I love that Daya is there to help them with all of this, and I mean, that's commendable. Wow. I really didn't realize that there's so much more that goes into it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, do you have any stories you can share with us about male clients that were able to achieve safety and healing from domestic violence?
Absolutely. So, and I'll go back first to kind of like the stats.
Yeah,
when we
please.
talk about
Yes.
domestic violence for men specifically, in the U.S., we see stats for women at like one out of 3. With men, it's typically like 1 out of 7. When you look at global statistics, you see closer to 25%, 1 out of 4 men are facing some sort of domestic violence or physical, assault that's related to an intimate partner. And that's pretty staggering statistics, 1 in 4 men. And then when you look at DIA's statistics, you see that we're only serving 5%. Are coming forward, and so you can see that number is really unreported and unrepresented, and we have some theories as to why that occurs. I mean, for sure, with any victimization, there's a stigma of coming forward, and this exists for both males and females, but I feel like it's even more prevalent from our male victims. I'd love for you to speak on that a little bit.
They said domestic violence does not discriminate by gender. Okay, hurt is hurt. It happens to both genders. It's about people coming forward and seeking help. I think men don't tend to do that. There's stigma. There's a little bit of pride and say, hey, I can take care of this myself. There is some of that. But I think that is gradually changing as we are witnessing ourselves in DIA. And from the time when we joined to now, there's a percentage of men coming forward seeking help has increased. And I think we want that to begin with, we don't want domestic violence at all. Okay, that is absolutely the ideal situation, either genders, but that's not going to happen in practice. It's just going to be there. It's a long-term education where things can change. But as things stand, I think the way we can do this were more outreach, more education, encouraging men to participate more in these organizations and activities and come forward. That's if they are a victim, just to come forward and seek help, call DIA or some other similar organization. So that's what it is.
And we were talking about like some of the barriers. You were talking about the services and how many layers there are to like leaving, but some of the culturally specific barriers, or even the non-culturally specific barriers, like think about leaving a relationship and all you've rooted into that, and a lot of times spouses are dependent on each other for status, for income, for a lot of things, and so all that comes into play when deciding to leave. And then there's that cultural barrier of like, what will people say, what will people think, and especially for our male clients, that's such a huge mountain to climb, because there's lots of feelings of like self-worth and self-doubt. We've heard things like, oh, does this make me less of a man because I've been facing this in my relationship? And we have such gendered views of like, emotional and psychological well-being, and how women should be a certain way and men should be a certain way, and all of those stigmas really play into our male victims wanting to come forward. It's not a really accepting society in general and globally and culturally for men to feel like they can feel safe to come forward with any of these things.
That's sad to me.
Yeah.
That we still live in a society that this happens.
Absolutely. And so, as Sash was saying, aside from our services for our clients, one of the big things we do is outreach and awareness and prevention education. And so we will go out into the community and set up booths in local neighborhood events, but also really culturally specific events to reach our target audience and kind of just talk about this. When I worked at Chetna, we were similarly aged in the amount of time we'd been in the community. And initially, probably you experienced this too, Sesh, like when we used to go out to community fairs or cultural events, melas and things like that, we would hand out our flyers and people would throw them away in front of us and kind of shame us for even talking about this topic. But things have improved over time. We're now, locally here we have a presence, we're respected, we have some credibility in kind of helping with these situations.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
We have in the past gone out into community groups, religious or even otherwise, and somebody handed out brochure, just talked about Daya, and a common answer is, oh no, we don't have that problem in, in our community. Or they might say, well, if we have an occasional problem, we will deal with it ourselves. Okay, so we don't need any outside help. So there is some of that, but that is also gradually changing. They are beginning to realize that they need professional help. They do make others know of that, and so that is changing. And one way we change, as Tasneem was saying, is we take out booths and hand out literature and key events and so on. That's a way we do outreach. Yeah.
And you mentioned religious events and religious barriers, and that's a whole other thing, because that's another big barrier that we face culturally and religious wise, because a lot of our scriptures, whether it be the Quran or the Gita or Christianity and the Bible, and we have of course clients that are all different religions. A lot of times those religions and those holy texts talk about preserving the family unit, and culturally we know very much that there's no I, there's a we, there's a family unit, and so breaking up that family unit is really troublesome for people in our culture, and so with the religious partnerships we have, Sesh, actually, I don't know if you want to talk about the June event, but we have been really lucky to have some gurudwaras and temples and mosques that really bring us into not just spread awareness, but education on the topic. And so in June, if you want to talk a little bit.
On June 14th, there is a Hindu youth convention coming up with 400 to 500 people expected to attend. And Daya has been invited as one of the panelists to talk to the young people, just to make them aware that such services are available. Of course, we are there in the context of encouraging to provide community service, but in the process we'll also be communicating to them specifically about Daya, what it does, so that if there is anybody there who needs any kind of help, they would seek Daya's help. The expected attendance is about 400 people this year, and of that maybe 70% will be in the age group 18 to 45. So that's a kind of a thing that we're expecting, and it's supported by 20 plus organizations in our area.
And it will be attended equally, I think, by males and females, youth. And what we know too is that there's this intergenerational cycle of violence, right? So when we talk about our services and our outreach and how we break that stigma, not just for women but for men, it's really reaching out to the youth, because we know that a lot of times when males in homes experience abuse, or females, they then absorb, learn, and model behaviors, right? And so we'll have these situations where children growing up in these homes that have witnessed it go on to be victims themselves or abusers. And so we want to continue, conversation is really the biggest, this open, honest dialogue, this platform that you guys give us really helps us be in front of the topic and break down those stigmas and help people understand that this pattern keeps repeating over generations, over time, because we don't step in and educate and find other ways, right? When we talk about men's health or health in general, what are we doing to prevent and to increase access to health services, right? So counseling is so integral to health and healing. Like I said, with abuse there comes things like anxiety and trauma and shame and guilt and blame, I brought this upon myself. And so that a lot of times will keep men especially from leaving relationships, because they feel somehow responsible as the patriarch of the family for bringing this upon themselves. And so that shame really will keep them in the spiral for much longer than they need to be. When we talk about public health, I think domestic violence isn't a topic. It's very taboo in our community, right? So if you talk about stats for cancer or for, other health, like physical health concerns, domestic violence is minimized. But when you look at the health issues that it causes, we know stress and trauma then plays out on the body, and a lot of our clients then experience not just psychosomatic but like physical illnesses because of these burdens that they carry around long term. So those are all things that we try to break with counseling and proper healing, and we have support groups, and we're having initiatives specifically that are coming up for men. Stay tuned for that. Like, we're working in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month to bring light and shed more light on these topics for men, with some truly inspirational men that we've been working with to kind of bring awareness that this isn't just a female issue or concern.
Yeah. Well, talking about different kind of mental health things that are different kind of situations that can happen to men. They can have PTSD. They can have depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay, and long-term health problems due to chronic stress and untreated injuries. So these are all some of the things that can happen. And Tasneem, of course, is the expert, but what I know in general is the domestic violence towards women is slightly different from domestic violence toward men. Okay, even though there can be a lot in common. Sexual abuse, physical violence is more, I think, in the case of women than in the case of men. For men, there is more psychological abuse and financial abuse. So that I think that happens. So that's so their requirement for counseling are different, and the way to deal with their issues are also different. So we need to be prepared for that, and I think we are well equipped in DAIA to deal with different types of abuses and how to provide proper guidance and counseling.
And I think you had initially asked about male survivors that we've specifically worked with, and one of our advocates was kind enough to share a story with me today where she...
I'm going to have you hold that
yeah.
thought. We're going to take a real quick break because I want to come back into this amazing story that you're about to tell us. So you are listening to 103.5 Hum FM with your Chai Time Girls. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to 103.5 Hum FM with your Chai Time Girls. We are in conversation with Daya Houston in regards to domestic violence and men's health. So before we went on break, we were talking about just different statistics and things like that. And we touched a topic where I wanted to actually talk about is that why, I don't know how to word it in the right way, but why do we raise our boys to who eventually become men to not have those emotions or not to speak up? It bothers me to see that we live in this society where we are teaching our young boys that it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to share your emotions. You have to be the strong man when you grow up. You have to be the strong provider. And we need to come out of that. How do we teach our young boys to show emotion or to speak about their feelings or to show that it's okay if you need to cry? It doesn't make you less of a man. So let's talk about that.
I mean, you hit on such a real topic for us, right? Because that happens daily in our relationships where we have these gender norms. I don't know why, but where men have to be strong and not show emotion and hold everything back and be the provider, and we have women that are like stepping up and being providers too. So, I think what we are trying to do is increase that awareness and the dialogue, and I think a lot of it comes with modeling, right? Starting with individual families and like our religious communities, our cultural communities, starting to talk about that. I love the film Inside Out, and I think about it often in those emotions that we teach kids, in general, we don't know how to regulate. Kids don't know how to regulate if they don't see it modeled in early childhood. So when you hide these emotions, what happens is it's like integrated into the way that you view yourself, the way that you view the world, and then what you project onto others. And so not dealing with those emotions, we know, ends up having all of these physical, emotional repercussions later on in life. And so we're really trying to break that stigma, going out to youth in communities like we just talked about at the June event, and really talking about, let's be in our emotions, let's feel it, because when you don't address hurt or anger or vulnerability, you don't really know how to then process anything that you're dealing with day to day. And then how does it typically come out? When we hold and we repress, for me it comes out in anger, right? Down the road. Yeah. And so we're trying to work through those emotions, or teach our young ones to work through them by emotionally regulating, by understanding first it's okay to be in that feeling, whatever that feeling looks like. Feelings are not good or bad, they just are. And that's a lot of the counseling and education that we do at Daya too, is like, feel what you're feeling, whether you're male or female, and then learn how to, regulate those emotions, channel them into appropriate ways. But yeah, we were talking a little bit during the break about all of our fathers, the models that we have for ourselves. And I know my dad, I didn't see him cry except for maybe once or twice. And what example did that set for my brother, right? Like, who then couldn't show his emotions publicly because for fear of what my dad might think. And, then he goes on to raise kids, and if he has boys, and he passes those views on to them. So I think for us, it's very much about education and breaking the cycle and providing counseling early.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It's something that, we can, through education and awareness, we can change some of those kind of behaviors.
Yeah. Do you see that changing, like, amongst the generations
through generations it's changing, and I think, as you were saying, there are more women getting involved in working, and they are also breadwinners. I think that dynamic's changing.
Yeah.
So with that, maybe that the men pride and all that also is also changing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if these things really have a change in domestic violence.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that changes that or not.
Yeah.
Only I hope it encourages men to seek help. That's the big thing that has to happen. Maybe the husband-wife dynamics, the family dynamics are changing, especially in societies like in the U.S.
Yeah.
Okay. But we need to. Men still may be victims of domestic violence and still keep quiet and not do anything about it. That can still happen. So that has to change.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. And then you were going to share some stories with us before we actually went on break.
Yeah, so one of our advocates shared a story of a survivor that she recently worked with, and he actually experienced all types of violence, so physical, emotional, verbal, financial, and psychological abuse at the hands of his spouse, I believe. And, we talked a little bit about, like, the different types of dynamics at play for domestic violence with men. Sometimes it's more psychological and emotional, but in this case it was physical as well. And so he didn't have any family or friends, was a recent immigrant here, and wanted to, avoid returning to an unsafe home, so he reached out to us. And at first, he felt all the stigmas that we just talked about. He was scared, and he was nervous about sharing his story because what would people think? And he also very much thought that no one would believe him and that this was occurring in his home. And, though male stature may be bigger, stronger, all those things, it doesn't mean that a female can't hit just as well, right? Or throw things, or all of those things. And then I know we kind of dance around this idea of sexual violence and abuse. And that, at Daya, I think a lot of people know us for working with victims of domestic violence, but we also work with victims of sexual assault and sexual violence. And that's both with like intimate partners and outside of intimate partner relationships too, right? Just strangers. And so we also want to shed light on that and when that occurs. And so there's all these dynamics at play. And of course, men then feel like, are we really going to believe that that happened to them? And then most of these men don't want to use their stature and then, hurt someone else back, thankfully, so that cycle doesn't perpetuate back and forth. And so then these things happen, and he felt like he would be considered less of a man due to the stigma. And so what our advocate did was just really listen and met him where he was at a pace that he was able to slowly build that trust and rapport with her. And then we offered him all the same services. And so he went to counseling, he received case management, safety planning, crisis intervention, legal assistance. We provided him 12 months of rent and utility assistance through a rapid rehousing program, and so a full year to kind of get him into a safe location. But our support didn't stop there. Then we worked with him on counseling, his legal goals, and we provided him things like a laptop because he wanted to obtain a job and achieve financial independence. And so we assisted him with that. He was able to find a better paying job, and through the legal process we helped him with something called a protective order, which, if you guys don't know, it's similar to a restraining order, but it's specifically for victims of domestic violence or physical violence in a relationship. And so that order really helps protect your residence within 500 feet of like where you work or where you live, to keep you safe in these situations. And so we were able to help him through the whole court process of that. We got him a Ring camera for his apartment, and even enrolled him in something called an address confidentiality program, because there was a lot of physical violence and stalking and keeping up with tabs with where he was going. And so we had to get him to a very secure, safe location, and even mask where he was living. But today I'm happy to say he is living a life free of violence. He's financially independent. He's emotionally supported and safe. And so, at Daya, we believe that everyone deserves to have that kind of success story and thrive. And we're really proud of working with those victims specifically that are having the most challenges in coming forward.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to build, you mentioned confidentiality.
Yeah.
I want to expand on that a little bit. Very important for men. It's important for women too, but it seems to be more so for men. I'm not a trained counselor, and I don't come into clients myself, except occasionally. But in those rare instances, I knew that confidentiality was a supreme thing. Okay, Daya goes has out of the way. Have a tremendous program for confidentiality. I attended board meetings regularly all these years. Never did they mention the name of a client. Okay, it is always referenced with some like a client A or CB, like that. And but the case will be described, what happened, and so that the board has an appreciation of what kind of problems are being solved. Okay, so and only the specific counselor knows the details about that particular client. So even within the organization, they all don't know. So we go to take this extra length to protect that, and I think we want to make aware of all our listeners that if they come forward, confidentiality, it's pretty safe. They can seek confidential help.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying that, because, I just read off of a story, and I'm the executive director. I'm a staff person there, and that's how much we appreciate someone's confidentiality, is that even I am not given the name of these clients. We help mentor our staff and build them up to a place where they understand, like, the dynamics and how important it is to keep that, like, private and secure. And when we talk about these stigmas of coming forward, like, that is the biggest fear, is like, what if someone finds out? What if someone at Daya works with my family member or knows them or is a family member? And it's like, we don't give that information out at all, even internally with staff. It's like, we're going to provide the services and we're going to keep you safe and secure in your homes. Yeah.
So, Mr. Bala, you've been with Daya since 2006.
Yes.
So tell us about your experiences as being a male in this field. What are your experiences at Daya?
I will tell you the very first board meeting I went to, there was a room full of women. And I was only this single male member walking in. I kid with them a little bit. I said I was scared to death, but not really. But I was not sure what to expect. They are dealing with situations where men were bad to women. Okay, and here comes this guy. Say it's one of those things. But then it was a very different experience. They all treated me so well. They made me feel at home. They helped me. They treated me like an equal, and so that they helped me contribute to the extent that I could. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was a very, very good experience, and I mean, hats off to all those women. They're all just absolutely wonderful. In those days when we started out, it was all a volunteer organization. Many board members. Some of the board members were themselves counselors. They handled phone calls and talked to the clients. So it's that's a starting point for us. So and now we have come a long way. And so I was very pleased to see the organization grow, to see being able to help more and more people.
Yeah.
And there is a recognition that there is a lot more people who need help.
Yeah.
And so we need to grow, and we have tried different things, tried to have our own transitional home and learn some lessons from that, and so we have also changed and evolved, and I think we are in the right direction. One of the best things we did was start hiring executive directors. And we are very fortunate to have had some very, very good ones, top notch, and they have helped take Daya, I would say, from a 1.0 to a 2.0 to a 3.0, in terms of services provided, in terms of being able to serve a number of clients, and now in this particular context today, being able to help more and more men clients, and so that's a guy. It's a great honor and privilege for me to have been associated with this organization, a very, very successful one, and a much needed service in the community.
Yeah.
And Sashanko is just so humble, but he has been so integral in, kind of setting the tone for like male survivors, and like the kind of support that we should be providing to them and in general to any survivors and victims, both, with his time, his volunteer service, his financial support, his advice, just checking in on all of us and treating us all like family has been, that's what I think sets us apart as a culturally specific agency, is we're very much embraced by the community, by individuals like you, and so we're super grateful. I have such an amazing board that I work with, and I'm proud to say that now we have several male board members there, and many. We've had male staff. We had an amazing counselor that, still works with us on contracted services. He's only not with us because he moved to Dallas, but we're still very connected to him, and, we will employ men over time, and we're going to be doing a whole series of male survivor stories in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so we're excited to launch that, and stay tuned for information on that as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? So, Mr. Bala, why is it important to increase awareness around male survivors, and how can we encourage more males to come forward and access service?
Yeah, it's a tough question and a difficult question, and I think it's going to be like that for a long time. I think that we just have to keep trying. More outreach, more education, more awareness building. And those are the ways that we can change these things.
Yeah.
And that's what we attempt to do with more outreach events, and we have had occasional seminars. We hold movies, movie events. So those are the ways we can get the word out. If we believe in the statistics, there are a lot more men out there who need help than women. Of course, women need a lot of help too. They're not coming out seeking help because of cultural reasons or other reasons. So I hope I answered your question,
You
at
did.
least partially.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, there is a gala that's coming up in September. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I wanted to add on to what you were
Sure.
saying too, and I think another way to help our men is just all of us, right? In the community, normalizing it for our men, like we were talking about, to not just feel things but come forward when they have these situations at play, and just as a friend or sister or cousin or a community member, I think because people come to know over time what I do for a living, I've had a lot of males come towards me, more than I've had females come towards me, to talk about what they're facing in their relationships. And it continually surprises me that they have been suffering for many, many years. That's the main difference I see, is that this is happening with a great prevalence, but the men hold it so deeply inside because of that fear. And it just takes someone that is willing to listen and understand and be non-judgmental. So I just encourage everyone to kind of provide that platform from the people in your lives and your families, so that we can start changing this dynamic over time and offering that safe place for people to come forward and talk to us and share these stories. And yes, absolutely, I'm super excited about our gala this year. It is coming up on September 28th, and it is our theme this year is the journey of transformation. And it's very much featured on kind of not, a lot of times with domestic violence, we see the sad side of the story and the abuse and the things, and that is also very much real. But we forget to emphasize the success that comes from moving out of that, the resilience that's built, the strength, the power in our survivors. Really, I'm inspired literally daily by the people we come across and their fortitude. And so this year, I'm really excited that we are featuring kind of the other side of that story, not just what happened in that abusive relationship, but how did that person then find that strength and resilience to come out of the situation, and then what does the other side of things look like? What are they doing for their kids and their community, and how are they kind of helping break that stigma for providing others a safe place really to come forward? And so we have, we're going to feature their voices, their strength, and what we ask about is having your support, the community's support. And so for nearly 30 years, like I said, we've been doing this in the community. And I'm just going to come out and say very transparently that the economic situation for nonprofits is not great, right? There's a lot of federal funding cuts that are occurring to our sister orgs. Knock on wood, we haven't seen it yet, but a lot of our, half of our annual operating budget is from state and federal grants. And so our annual fundraiser is our way of kind of supporting, keeping our doors open, helping more clients. We know if there's 1 in 4 men, 1 in 3 women, and we're only seeing 600 a year, that there are many, many out there that we're not able to support. And we've had many of our partner orgs have to shut their doors, cut their services, and so we're asking for the community to come out in masses and support this organization, because we know we're going to be here for the foreseeable future. We will stand through this, but we are going to need extra resources to face those federal funding cuts, to, take on the additional clients when our friends have to shut their doors, and to provide that culturally specific service. Now, we work with all victims of domestic violence, regardless of their age, their gender, their culture, their background, but we do have a culturally specific expertise, or linguistically, specific services, so that when our clients from certain communities come to us, we speak 15 different, like last year we provided services in 15 different languages, and those weren't just South Asian languages. So imagine being in a place where you don't know the country, you don't know the norms, and you don't know the language. How likely are you going to reach out for help, right? And so our ability to staff the right people that can speak the languages and understand the culture, whatever that may be, whether it's Spanish or German, or, we have a multitude of languages we support, and of course the South Asian dialects. It's so important. And so we're asking you guys to come out. Right now we have our sponsorship packets available. We have levels from 5,000 to 25,000 event sponsors. And then in June, I believe June 16th, we will open the ticket sales. And so that's for you guys to come out as community members and support us. But if you have a small business, or if you have connections in a corporate organization, we please ask you to, kind of partner with us for our sponsorship levels, because that will make the most impact. And then I'm really excited to say we have some super inspirational speakers this year. We have, so we've partnered with a documentary filmmaker. Free From is the company, and what's really great about this company, it's called Free From because it really promotes being free from abuse. And so the founder is South Asian. She lives in California, and we're connected to her through actually our last executive director works with her now. And so what they've done is they've taken some really inspiring stories of not just South Asian survivors, but survivors of all different cultures. And they actually started up a marketplace where they wanted to give survivors a living wage so that they could come out of these situations financially empowered. And so their company employs just survivors. It's run by survivors, and it's a marketplace where they create handmade goods like candles or soaps or artwork or things like that, and they package it together and sell it. And so they then created a documentary featuring those survivors working there and how they had been able to reach economic empowerment through those means. And so we're very excited to bring on Cherry Moore. She is their sales and marketing manager at Gifted, and she's in the documentary Survivor Made. And so 3 days before the gala, we're going to feature the film screening here with Cherry there as part of the panel, will be part of the panel. And so you'll get a sneak preview of that film. Then at our gala, she will be speaking. She's a Filipino survivor. She's worked with the South Asian CEO. And so she very much understands the cultural norms and barriers that one faces when leaving these abusive relationships. So she'll be speaking with us. And then what I'm even more excited about is that we have our very own Daya client that is going to be speaking this year. And if anyone has been to a Daya gala where we have a survivor speaking, you know that it is probably heartfelt and genuine and inspiring event. And so we will be at the Sugarland Marriott where we were in 2019 when we last featured a story like that. And so we have a really powerful female survivor that's going to come forward and talk about her survivor story, but not just that, how she was able to then to turn her experience into something positive. She has children. She's been able to break that silence with them and teach them, that abuse is not okay in their lives, in their relationships. She is a marathon runner. She's like inspiring in so many ways. She's a director at a high-tech company. And so she'll be coming to share her voice and her story of how Daya kind of came in at a time where she was at her most vulnerable and kind of provided counseling and case management and support services so that she could get to that other side. So yes, it will be again September 28th. It's a Sunday evening. It will be inspiring and fun. We'll have some sort of entertainment as well, a silent auction. It will be just a really heartwarming event, and it will help Daya. All proceeds will come back to us. And if you want to get in front of those tickets, our website is dayahouston.org, and we have a Gala website from that website itself. And so please log on, take a look at our speakers, take a look at the sponsorship packets and the ticket opportunities that will be opening soon.
Yes, go get your tickets.
Yes, thank you.
As Tasneem mentioned, community support is very, very important.
Absolutely.
Especially as we likely to face some funding cuts from federal grants, especially. And one way the community can show support is by attending the Gala. It's Gala is part of a community support, even though it's a kind of a different kind of a setting. That's a part of community support, and that's very, very important for us.
Absolutely. Yes. So go get your tickets. Tickets open on June 16th, you said?
June 16th. Sponsorship packets are available now, and you can visit dayahouston.org.
Awesome. Well, I can't believe an hour's already passed. We told you, Mr. Sash.
You did.
I want to end with a little quote. The scars from mental cruelty can be as deep and long-lasting as wounds to the body. A victim can be left with a deep sense of worthlessness and self-doubt. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please consider reaching out to a trusted friend, professional, or an organization like Daya Houston that can help. You are not alone. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I always learn so much. I really appreciate you guys. Continue to do the work that you guys do. You have helped so many people, and I just can't wait to see what's next for you guys. I mean, I think you guys are just doing a phenomenal job. Every day you reach so many people, help so many people, and I don't think there's any organization such as y'all. I mean, the work and the heart that you guys put into everything. It's
Thank you for
phenomenal.
having us. Thank you for having us.
We want to applaud your part in this dialogue too. So thank you to Chai Time.
You guys are. But thank you so much. You are listening to us on 103.5 Hum FM with your Chai Time girls. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Thank you.